As Alex said, the cost is even higher for developing countries' economies. And I would strongly disagree with what Daniel said, that it actually favors citizens against their oppressive governments, because in fact, what we found in CCFD, in my organization, is that tax havens play a very key role in protecting the corruption of oppressive governments. You can find the evidence of the role of Luxembourg, Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and others in protecting the assets of Mobutu, of Suharto, Marcos, and many other oppressive leaders.
Okay, I mean, but that, Daniel, I'll let you kind of make this clear here. Is that a question, what he's describing, what Jean is describing, of banking secrecy laws or tax haven status? Because there is a difference. I mean, when you have somebody like Mobutu compared to someone like Michael Schumacher, who actually is residing in Switzerland because he would prefer not to pay German taxes, you would protect Schumacher's right to do that, I assume, but not someone like Mobutu's right to hide his money that was stolen from the Congolese public in Switzerland.
Well, I certainly would agree that you have plenty of corrupt politicians all around the world. And if those politicians are trying to skim off some of the public treasury, and whether they're hiding it in New York or London, which are the two favorite destinations, or whether they're trying to hide the money in tax havens, the problem is the corrupt governments. And we have this very unseemly circular flow of foreign aid money going from nations like the U.S. and European nations going to these people in the third world. They then recycle it back to their own personal bank accounts in New York and London. I don't like that any more than I suppose the rest of your guests like it. But I think one of the key factors that we're talking about here is what is the moral legitimacy of a nation where 90% of the population gangs up on 10% of the population and rapes and pillages them. I don't blame successful people, the ones that are creating the jobs and driving the economies, trying to protect their money when you have tyranny of the majority. One of the great features of the American Constitution was the protections against untrammeled majoritarianism. You don't let 51% of the people exploit 49% of the people. And if you have a country like France or Germany or Japan or any country where a small minority of people who happen to have money are ganged up on and oppressed by the rest of the population, I think those people who are being oppressed have the right to protect themselves. Now, ideally, they can totally escape the country, as so many successful people have escaped France. They've gone to Germany, they've gone to Monaco, they've gone to Belgium and other places. But ultimately, I think people's freedom to protect their families' assets from exploitation by government matters more than the governments themselves.
Okay, Alex, let me let you then please address my question between the difference between tax havens and banking secrecy laws. Could there be a better balance between those two so that, you know, someone who doesn't want to pay taxes the highest bracket in a country like Germany can reside, and I mean reside, not pretend to reside, in a country like Switzerland fairly and no longer have to pay German taxes?
Absolutely. As long as there is complete transparency between jurisdictions about who are the beneficial owners of assets and income streams, and therefore of taxable liabilities, then I would fully support that. The problem with tax havens is not, let's be clear about this, it's not the level of tax that they choose to levy on domestic residents or domestic companies. It's the level of taxation that they levy on foreign residents and foreign resident companies combined with the secrecy that they apply to that. It's the fact that, in effect, they don't only strip away the taxing rights of other, often poorer countries, they also hide it from them. So what we find, I really must disagree again with Daniel. I think he has a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of tax and governance. What all the evidence shows is that because, you know, we can see very clearly nobody likes paying tax. Perhaps Daniel especially would appreciate this argument. He obviously doesn't like paying tax at all. But it's because of that, it's because people don't like paying tax, that when they find they are paying tax to their government, they have an incentive to hold that government to account. So what we see over time is a very strong relationship between taxation and representation. The higher the level of tax that people pay, in particular income tax and taxation on corporate profits, the more they hold their governments to account, the less corruption there is and the stronger the process of democratisation. Tax havens are based on secrecy, not low taxes, and that secrecy undermines that relationship between governments and citizens and therefore threatens democracy, both in rich and poor countries.
Okay, Daniel, still very unconvinced.
Well, if we follow that argument to its logical extreme, we'll have the most accountable and representative governments if we have 100% tax rates. I think, though, maybe there's a way we can bridge this divide. We obviously, none of us like tax evasion per se. The real question is, what's the best way to reduce tax evasion? Do we reduce tax evasion by reforming tax systems and lowering tax rates? Even the OECD and the IMF agree that is a very successful approach to better tax compliance. Or do we try to create a global tax cartel, sort of an OPEC for politicians?
Daniel, if we take your argument to its logical extreme, the way that we reduce tax evasion to zero is to reduce taxation to zero. Now, clearly, that's ridiculous. We know the difference between rich countries where people live relatively good lives and poor countries where people are often deprived of their basic needs is fundamentally about the state's revenues and the state's responsiveness to its citizens. Both of those things reflect
I think you're raising a key point. The question is, what is the appropriate size of government? There's a lot of academic research out there showing that once governments consume more than about 20% of GDP, they wind up hurting economic performance. So I agree with you. Governments should provide those core public goods, but most nations are far, far too big. The governments are far too big. In France, government spending consumes 50% of GDP. You can't have a growing economy and tax compliance with that kind of fiscal burden.
Okay, quickly, let me get Jean final word here.
In whose name are you talking? I mean, the French citizens have chosen to have a 40% tax rate because they want good schools, they want good infrastructures, they want security, they want a strong state with lots of public services. If you want to elect in the US governments that tax less their citizens, that's your choice. But please do not tell French citizens what we're supposed to do.
Okay,
but those same,
Daniel,
those
I'd love
same
to give you a
French
response
citizens...
to that, but we need to take a break now, unfortunately. 12 minutes for news and weather, but we will continue this discussion after that time. All of our panelists return, and I will get to Zurich when we come back, so do stay with us.